Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Beatty, coming to you live from the McCarthy Middle School, where the polls have just closed on April 3rd's election, and we are here to bring you the results as quickly as they become available. I'm aided, as I have been in the past, by Glenn Thoren, who's no stranger to town politics. Welcome, Glenn.
Glad to be here. So let's see what happens tonight.
Absolutely. So, you know, this is, it's been kind of a cold, dreary day here in town, and the rain typically would keep a lot of people away, but we have had not one but two contested races, which generally brings a lot of people out, and also seven ballot questions.
Little reading to do.
That's another indication often that if there are contentious issues, and there certainly is one on this set of seven questions that we'll get to in a moment. Glenn, you've been out and about, maybe keeping a little bit close tabs on things. What's your sense of how things went today?
Well, I think that, you know, as usual, there's a group of dedicated voters in Chelmsford that will come out, you know, at every election because they have been keeping track of what's going on in the town, and they will show up. And I think we're at, we'll see when the numbers come in, we're at about that amount of voters, something well north of 15%, but probably well less than 25%. So these people are keeping track of what's going on in town. They pay attention to the campaigns, and they want to come out and have their voice heard. So they will have been here today, and we'll see what they thought.
So in a sense, that's a good thing, because the people, we wish more people voted, obviously.
Of course.
There's 20, I think I talked to Tricia Zuris, there's 25,417 registered voters here in town. You would like to have at least, 5,000 or 10,000 of them voting on any given election. But what you're saying is that the fact that these people who have an investment and who are vested in the outcome are the ones who are voting, and therefore, in a sense, that's a good demographic to have voting.
It is, because you'd be worried if nobody was paying attention. But, if you have even a fifth of the town paying attention to what's going on, then decisions will be made that do probably reflect what the town is thinking. It's sad that some people don't get out to vote because there's so much at stake. Everything from the condition of the town, renovation of buildings, tax rates. There's a lot going on in the town that does affect everybody individually. And so the question is, why wouldn't people vote? And, how do you get them out to vote? So that you've got a couple of contested elections, that helps. And then you've got a series of amendments to the bylaws, that's going to help, and a couple of questions on splitting the tax rate in town. So we'll see.
Because we're right here at McCarthy, and because we're definitely plugged in electronically and in spirit, if nothing else, to the town clerk's office, we do expect to have the results, preliminary though they might be, not counting absentee ballots and that sort of thing, for you during this broadcast. So please stay tuned, and we'll have those for you. While we have a moment before the first precincts start checking in, Glenn, let's take a look at the two contested races.
Sure.
For Selectman, we had three people running for two seats, and two of them are incumbents, and one is a newcomer.
Well, both the Selectman's race and the school committee race had a new player in town, a new candidate that both have not been in town nearly as long as the incumbents have been in town, but they're both interested in serving in town government and had very good arguments during the debates. So now we're going to take a look and see at how did the voters react to those particular debates, and how do the voters react to the people that are currently serving? Have they done a good job? And for the Board of Selectmen, will they be the right candidates to carry on into the future? Everybody who's following any of the election activities knows Laura Merrill and George Dixon. So they're undoubtedly going to get a certain large following. Does Emily Antul have the arguments to attract enough voters to make a difference there?
Right, and so there were no shortage of opportunities to get to know the candidates during this election cycle, which I think to me seemed incredibly compressed. It was suddenly the election was upon us.
It was really fast.
And then bang, 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 we had four debates, the town Republican and Democratic committees, the Chelmsford Business Association, and the League of Women Voters.
Yeah, that even got postponed because of bad weather, so they had to reschedule the Chelmsford Business Association vote.
Right.
And
so the takeaways, at least in the Selectman's race, is that one of the touch points was this annual vote that the Selectmen take on whether to have a split tax rate, which is actually one of the ballot questions. And there's a clear distinction between some of the candidates on that.
Well, that was sort of one of the exciting issues on this campaign sequence, is that for years, Chelmsford years ago had a split rate, and it wasn't very much, it was 5%, but it took a number of years to get that back down to parity. And a long time ago, back in 1995, I was the head of a tax classification study committee that looked at that in some detail. I was in favor of the split rate before I ran the committee, and enough information changed my mind on that. We wrote a report in 95. Then Sam Chase, on behalf of the Selectmen, put together another report looking at assessed rates and a variety of things in 2005, and there hasn't been a study since then. So, right now we're looking at, shall we create another study that looks at it today and see what's changed, especially when we're trying to bring in new business to the town.
And the point's been made that a number of other communities in the area have a split tax rate. Some of them are charging businesses up to 50% more than the rate charged to residences. And yet, it seems to be a very controversial. One of the debates that I caught, the one sponsored by the Chelmsford Business Association, not surprisingly, the CBA is opposed to the split rate. And the moderator, Doug Hausler, was really turning the screws on the candidates for the positions on it.
I was sitting in the front row at the debate that night, and I get the full impact of some very difficult back and forth questioning going on. In fact, the CBA years ago was created in part because of the concern of the split rate becoming even more split back in the day, and they wanted to put in front of the selectmen reasons why the split rate might be better at parity. And eventually they won that argument. Our town is different than some of the neighboring towns, and one of the interesting things is people keep saying, well, so many towns have this split rate, but that's not true. I think it's a little over 100 towns and cities in Massachusetts have a split rate where there's 351 cities and towns, so it's really less than a third. Right. And a lot of them are trying to get out of the split rate because of what it does to the businesses in their town. So it's a very complex issue that was tried to be addressed by a straw vote on a very simple question that I personally didn't think was worded very well, but that's just my opinion.
So the three candidates, George Dixon has served for 3 terms. He is Mr. Steady, if you will. I think he probably, if he gets up here, I'm going to ask him. I think he spent $1.50 for his campaign, just piecing back together the reelect cycle.
Exactly right.
Then Laura Merrill has been very consistently looking for ways to reduce taxes and return money to the voters. And Emily Antul is as you say, a new face in town. She's not a long timer. She's only been here a short time, but has brought experience that seems pretty credible on the debate stage.
Well, again, a different way of looking at things. Still some questions remain about how she's actually going to accomplish some of the things she thought she might want to try and do. So that when you have candidates that have been in office and you can measure them on what they've done and what they've said and how they interact with the public, it's kind of difficult to take a new person and put them up against that same yardstick.
Now, do you perceive her youth as a factor in this?
No.
In the sense of bringing a fresh perspective, perhaps.
It's funny you should mention that, because I don't think there's an election that has gone by where somebody new running for any position doesn't say, I have fresh new ideas. And it really comes down to what exactly are those fresh new ideas, and can they be implemented successfully in Chelmsford? So I've been around listening to this for a long time, so I get, the hair on the back of my neck sticks up sometimes when fresh new ideas enters a discussion. Okay, what are they?
Okay, so let's roll that over into the school committee, which has an opening because Salapoli chose not to run for re-election, and 2 previous untested, shall we say, people are running for that seat, but they're very different in their backgrounds.
They are. Again, I've spoken to both of them extensively, and I have known Donna Newcomb for a number of years because she's worked on a number of school projects that Evelyn has also worked on. So she's, sort of a known person, and she's been staying out of the political arena because her kids were in school, and so now both of her kids are going off to college, and they're terrific kids. So she's stepped up to say, I think I can do more, and that's a great perspective to take. And Jamie Outland Brown is new to the town, but she's got a tremendous amount of energy, a lot of leadership skills. It's somebody you can look forward to playing.
And accounting skills.
And accounting skills. Look forward to playing an important role in the town in the future. But, you know, it's good to step up and see just what the interaction is on something like running for a major position.
So we're waiting for, as you can see there on the screen, Precinct 4 has checked in as we have their results, and we're about to see them now. You can see there that in the race for the Selectman that George Dixon has the lead, and maybe surprisingly, Emily Antul is in second place. Now, Precinct 4 is Westlands, is it?
Yes.
Not? And so...
it is.
And I'm looking to see where Emily lives and whether that's a factor, but...
You know, I should have asked her that.
Yeah.
So
in any case, this is. Do you find this surprising?
No. I mean, everybody was trying to pay attention to what each candidate was bringing to the debates, and when we see the other precincts come in, we'll get a better sampling of what's going on. And Donna Newcomb has done very well, which I think because people have known Donna for so many years, that's not unexpected.
She, a lot of people she has said, been asking her for a very long time, when are you going to run for school committee? Right. Because she has such a deep resume in terms of educational experience. And I think that now that her children are in college, as I understand it, she now feels that she has the free time to make a difference.
Exactly right. And she's a very intelligent, thoughtful lady, as is Jamie. But, Jamie being new to the town doesn't quite have the same perspective that Donna has. But she'll get it very fast because she definitely wants to stay involved. I had about 5-minute conversation with her last night, and she really does want to stay involved, and that's fabulous to hear.
And the debates, you try to draw differences between the candidates. There's a lot of common ground between them in terms of what they see the issues are and what they see going forward. We have these looming issues like trying to buy a new high school and
yes.
trying to smooth out some ruffles that have emerged on the school committee itself. I have to say, I've been in the town a long time, and I mean, not as long as you, I'm sure, but there is no job, certainly among those who are not paid to do it in town, more challenging than being on the school committee. And I
can
know
attest to that.
You can probably, because you were a school committee widower for a long time there.
And if you really want to do a good job, it does take a lot of dedication and focus. And, Evelyn being on the school committee for 18 years, I find it hard to believe I can even say that
6
number.
terms. Wow.
Yeah, it's the amount of hours, I calculated the amount of hours she spent on a yearly basis, and it was breathtaking. It was almost a full-time job. It's something that years exceeded 1,500 hours a year on just school committee activities.
Well, and I think part of the issue is there are so many facets to that job. Yes, the selectmen have an important job, but a good chunk of their time is being a sounding board for the residents and so forth. The school committee, you're not only dealing with this interface between the teachers and the students and the public, but there's the whole gigantic morass of regulation that's changing quickly that you have to toe the line on.
And they also have to deal with all the contracts, because the school committee is represented on the negotiations with the teachers, with the staff. They hire the superintendent, so they have to negotiate his particular salary and package as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's so many people in the schools that are actively participating all the time between athletics and academics, that school committee members, Evelyn for certain, she got a lot of phone calls in the course of a month, just to be aware of issues and sometimes to find out, well, who do I talk to when I have this particular issue on academics or athletics or something with my son or daughter? And she would point them in the right direction and just say, let me know how that goes. Yeah.
All right, so for those of you who might not have voted today, which I'm guessing is a few of you anyway, but thank you for tuning in at least. There were 7 ballot questions, many of them put forward by the town meeting and actually voted to put them forward, and some of them were put forward by the Board of Selectmen. Question 1 a couple of them had to do with the nature of being a town meeting rep. Question 1, for example, asked whether it could be the process of an incumbent putting their name back in the hat could be streamlined instead of having a 25 vote, yes, I'm willing to support somebody, canvassing it at the farmers markets and such. Similarly, question 2 had to do with if there was a vacancy in town meeting and somebody had previously run but lost the seat, could they take over that seat if they had received, right now it's at least, they have to receive at least 10 votes, I guess. And the question is, if they received any votes, would that make them a candidate? You see the question 1 there. A lot of these, I think, are not exactly housekeeping kinds of questions, but for example,
charter change questions. Let's rewrite the charter to say the following: the selectmen and town meeting has approved it, but it has to go to the voters.
Right. So question 3, if you were with us at last town meeting, this was an object of some debate when Charlie Wojcik was appointed elected to become the new constable. The issue is whether constable should be an elected position or one appointed by the town manager with the buy-in of the police chief. We'll get to that as it comes on. I want to kind of get through these. Questions 4 and 5 had to do with future town managers. Again, these are charter issues. Whether their screening committee should consist of selectmen and town residents. I was a little unsure. Was there no provision for a screening committee previously?
Well, there was, but it wasn't called out in the charter. So now it's just locking it down to something more specific in the charter so that everybody, all the stakeholders are represented in that particular vote.
And then similarly, question 5 had to do with if you had an interim town manager as you were out searching for a replacement, whether a 6-month term, an initial 6-month term, could be extended for another 6 months.
Is it enough?
Right. And you see there that got a resounding vote in favor of that. And then questions 6 and 7 were the ones that I think will be most interested in watching. We were kind of discussing this beforehand. Chelmsford has a tax rate for residents and a tax rate for businesses, which is the same amount right now.
Right.
It's one rate. And so the Board of Selectmen votes every year whether to maintain that or not after input from the assessors and other things. And so the board put forward this notion, let's poll the citizens and find out where their head is at on the question of whether it should be there should be a split rate or not. And as you can see, if precincts 2 and 4 now reporting are any indication, the population as a whole thinks there should be.
So this is why splitting the tax rate is not left to the voters. Because if you put the split tax rate in the hands of the voters, the question becomes simply, how would you like to have your taxes lowered and have businesses pay for it?
Because the residents can vote, but the businesses can't.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why it's put in the hands of the selectmen so that they can do the appropriate research and analysis for the town as a whole. Does it make sense to split that rate, which has some tremendous impact on smaller businesses? And now it's particularly interesting because we've got a group of people trying to bring new business in the town. So to me, it's like a cognitive dissonance. Hey, would love you to come to our town as a new business, but we're going to raise your taxes.
Right.
And I can't get my arms around why that makes any sense.
Well, that's right. And so if this proves to be the kind of margin that the other precincts deliver, one could say, well, this was going to be a foregone conclusion.
Of course. I could have predicted this. I could have bet real money on that, but I don't bet money on outcomes. But the way it was stated was basically, how would you like to have your taxes lowered and have businesses pay for it?
Right.
I mean,
and then finally,
how that's coming out.
And then finally, question 7, assuming that 6 passes, assuming that a split rate is established, question 7 floated the idea of having an exemption, a sort of a discount, if you will, on the tax rate for small businesses, what you might call small businesses. Fewer than 10 employees, less than $1 million, I think, in revenue. But I heard the assessor give a report, something like the vast majority of businesses in Chelmsford would be eligible for this discount.
Would not be.
Would be. It was like something like 255. Maybe I misheard him.
So there's a lot of small businesses. If you go to the malls around town, you look at the small businesses in town. A lot of them are renting space in like Summer Street, for example. And when you're a renter, you're the amount of taxes paid on the property is paid by the property owner. So what happens there is the property owner will pass on a tax increase to the renters, and they don't get a small business exemption because they're not the property owner.
So we're going to go back to the results here that you can see. These are the results for, we now have results for 4 out of the 9 precincts in town. And I'm going to guess that it really isn't precinct 1, that this is actually the cumulative vote that we're seeing here.
Yeah, that looks like it.
In which case, Emily Antul is continuing not only to hold a majority over Laura Merrill, but is starting to challenge George Dixon for a high vote count. I would find that really pretty surprising.
It is. It is for someone so new. I don't know how many years Emily has been here, but I'm sure it's less than 10. For her to make that case and have voters come out and support her, that's significant.
So you think we now have, what you see there is now 5 out of the 9 precincts reporting. And so do you think there is some sort of backlash that George has been in the seat too long? It's time for maybe he's...
I don't think it has any reflection on George because he's doing very well in the vote count. He clearly is leading there. Emily has made a case to the voters on a couple of issues that she has some skills and capability that apparently they may want. Mm-hmm. So she didn't have a lot of signs out. She didn't have a lot of public presence that I could see.
In fact, I'm not sure if we can get a close-up of this. I got this in the mail. It was addressed to a VIP voter. This was the one and only real thing that I saw from Emily. It looks to be, and I think it is, a hand, I'll have to ask her about this if I get a chance to talk to her, a hand-lettered card on both sides, making a case for her and her candidacy. It was delivered to me, and I actually went to her website, her campaign website. It's a very straightforward, text-intensive. A lot of things were put down that represented her positions. Did you get one of these, Glenn?
I don't recall getting one, to be honest with you.
Well,
so with the
and I really am a VIP voter, and
with the vote count essentially in here, it looks like the decision is probably made because 300 votes is, or 260 votes is way too many to catch up on between precincts 3 and 8.
Right.
So it looks like George and Emily are going to be the victors in the Selectmen's race this year.
And we'll hope to get one or both of them for you before our time here is up. The halls outside are pretty quiet right now, but we'll see who is still around. Maybe they're off celebrating somewhere already. Again, these are just these results are preliminary, and they're obviously not complete yet. But we are endeavoring to get all 9 of the precincts reporting here as quickly as we possibly can.
The difference is sufficient enough that you know who's going to be the next selectman. That's pretty clear. I didn't catch the school committee.
Yeah, well, we'll try to get that as if we can. Again, so those are selectman results have just been updated to reflect now 8 out of the 9 precincts. Right. So again. Emily Antul has about a 260 vote lead over Laura Merrill for the second place spot. So that is the way it's going so far. We will obviously there's a lot of other things on this ballot besides these contested races, and we're not really going to be talking about the planning board, board of health, library trustees, cemetery commission. In those cases, there were seats. To be elected, and there were candidates, but none of them were contested. And in fact, in some cases, there were vacant seats that have gone there were no nominees for it.
There were too many precincts that didn't have 6 candidates, which was kind of disappointing.
Right. So let's lay it out. The town meeting representatives are representative of the various precincts. There are 18 in each of the 9 precincts. And 6 out of those 18 are elected every year on a rotating basis. And so you would like to see at least 6 people running for those positions, but that wasn't always the case. I'm looking at Precinct 2, for example, had only 4 people, all incumbents, running for re-election. That means that precinct is going to be underrepresented, if that means anything.
Unless they're write-in candidates. So I would hope and expect that some of these precincts had write-in candidates to fill out those extra spots. But we don't know yet.
There were a couple of precincts that had more candidates than available seats. Precinct 5, my precinct. I'm happy to announce have that. Now here you see, just jumping back, we have the results for the contested school committee race. Donna Newcomb, a really resounding victory for her. I think the entire town was wallpapered with her campaign posters. Obviously, a lot of people were supporting her candidacy. And Jamie Outland Brown, a new face. It's always hard to crack into politics if you don't have a track record, I'm sure.
It is harder, but Emily certainly did.
I was going to say, she disproves that. So we want to congratulate Donna, and we're about to be joined by Emily Antul, who is apparently going to be our new one of our new selectmen. And as soon as we get her mic'd up, we'll get to that. And again, these town meeting rep races we will not be posting during this broadcast, but they will be available online before as we get them, and you can go to live.chelmsfordtv.org to get those results. So I'd like to welcome you and congratulate you on a victory.
Thank you.
Now the work begins.
Yes.
Yes.
Are you surprised?
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. People had told me I needed to raise a lot more money and do a lot more things, but I mainly spent time researching what could possibly be asked in the debate and looking at issues and trying to keep all my facts and figures straight.
So either you paid off a lot of people to vote for you.
I did not.
I think you did.
I did not.
Or obviously your principal means of exposure were the candidate debates.
The candidate debates, and then whatever I got on the internet.
And so do you want to sort of set a sense of proportion, and where do you think your social media presence was strong, or was getting in front of the voters in the debates an important part?
I think the debates were big. I think the Lowell Sun endorsement helped tremendously. I had a tiny ground network from a couple of groups I'm in that worked really hard to get volunteer postcards out for me. So
I have one.
Yes.
I have to ask you, was this handwritten?
Yes, they were handwritten. It's a group called. I'm drawing a blank. This is horrible. It's Postcards to Voters, which, yes, is very obvious. I'm a little flabbergasted. So it's Postcards to Voters, and it's volunteer writing. they write. You give them talking points, and they write postcards. So I will be spending a couple of hours writing postcards for people in other elections around the country to pay back.
I see.
So it's pretty impressive what can happen.
So what do you think were the issues that set you apart in this race?
Well, obviously people are focused on taxes. I believe in a split tax rate. Many people would say that property taxes are regressive, and a better way to tax people is based on services, but we haven't quite figured out how to do that as a country yet. So one of the ways to do that is through a split tax rate. So I pay 10 cents more a beer, or whatever, $1 more, whatever, and that means that as I am using those services of that restaurant, of that hair salon, or whatever, I am in effect paying a slightly higher tax on the service that I am using, and that makes it more progressive and less regressive. So that it's one way to look at it. I think I saw someone who had done out the math, and if 1 out of every 750 Chelmsford residents spent a third of their tax return at Brick House, they would more than make up for their tax increase. So it's, I absolutely know it doesn't hurt business. So
for Emily, things like if you're paying for services, we at one time we had to buy our trash bags.
Yes.
So that paid for.
I had to do that in Worcester. Yes.
Yes. Do you like that idea as well? If you pay for everything that they pick up at the curb?
Well, it's one way to get it done. And if you are looking for alternative revenue streams and you are trying to balance a budget or raise funds, then that might be something that would have to be considered. I think that when you are looking to broaden your revenue base, then you have to start looking and seeing what other communities are doing and whether or not that makes sense. Some solutions will absolutely not make sense for a community this size. Some will make a lot of sense. And so you have to sit down and you have to look at the numbers and you have to consider what would work.
That was the first thing that came to mind when you said pay for services. That's one of the big ones.
Right. So trash, possibly.
Millions of dollars a year.
Yes, possibly. I don't know. Again, it would have to be looked at in the context of the population, of where the savings would go, where, I mean, we have debt, we have schools to rebuild, we have schools to gut and remodel. We have, I mean, there are a lot of, I spent some time with the Dore Whittier survey this afternoon, just looking at what their recommendations had been and what the different options they had laid out were. And, you know, like I said, we have to explore all of the options. We have to put them on the table and figure out what would work best for Chelmsford.
There's a lot to talk about.
There is. There really is. There's a lot more reading to be done.
So you have been a town meeting rep.
Yes.
And so how did that inform you and inform your decision to run?
Well,
did you see a need?
I think that my experience planning classes and managing textbook publication projects, which involved translation. We took textbooks and we had them translated and then edited and then produced and then re-edited and then checked. So there were a lot of steps involved in getting a textbook to publication. And I was a small cog on that wheel, but I was managing different teams in different countries, and it took a lot of planning and a lot of organization. And I would like to see clearer long-term goals. I would like to see, we have a vision statement from 2010. It's now 2018. It's about time to write another one. And I would like to see the new vision statement with concrete goals. So it's wonderful to say Chelmsford will have, that's fabulous. How do we get there? So I think I'm good at figuring out those steps to reach the goal and how to break down larger goals into smaller chunks so that we can actually get to where we want to be. So I
Do you think the current Board of Selectmen is maybe a more ad hoc than you'd like to see?
I think it lacks some focus, and it's nothing personal. I have nothing personal against anyone on the board. I think that it lacks some focus, and I would like to try to help, you know, and if I can, great. That would be wonderful. And I would also like to see lots more people getting involved and running and filling out all the spots for all the positions we have. I would like to see contested elections for everything. You know, we had 3 people running for the 3 spots on the planning board. That's awesome. I'm happy to have a full planning board. I would like to see more people running. I would like to see a diverse
town meeting reps.
Array. I would like to see more town meeting reps. I would like to see a diverse array of people running. I want to see more citizen involvement. So I figured if I took a step to put myself out there and prove that you can do it on a shoestring, on nothing. I was given some pretty crazy numbers of multi-$1,000 pots of money I was supposed to find somewhere, and I didn't need to do that. And so for local town elections, I think that if more people knew that they could get involved and it wasn't such a big deal to raise, I have a nice pot to throw a party next time I want to run.
There you go.
You know,
and now
this is where I'll start.
You go from the frying pan into the fire.
Oh, it's a big fire, yes.
The board will reconstitute very quickly.
Yes, I'm sure, yeah.
Probably next week.
I think so.
And
the rumor is there's a quick meeting on Thursday to set a new chair. So
that'll be this week. Yep.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So that's what I've been told.
And since you were deep into research for this election, you can go deep into the research for the town
for whatever
meeting.
the next stage is. Yeah. So.
Well, you had a very good day today.
I am very surprised. Yeah. I didn't know what to expect.
Well, we're very happy to have your involvement, and congratulations. And we'll look forward to seeing you on camera a lot more in
oh boy,
certainly for the next
time to
3
buy
years.
makeup.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Emily.
Thank you.
Let's keep the microphone
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
And there you go. go. Thank you very much. You're free
Thank you
to
very
go
much.
party.
Time to party.
Or, go sleep.
We're still trying to figure out what's going on with precinct number 3, which has yet to really report
Somebody
in.
jam up the machine there?
Apparently, I saw busloads of people rolling up from New Hampshire.
Oh, did you
voting-
really?
Yeah, outside of.
You should have taken
McCarthy.
pictures of the license plate.
You know what happened? I voted in every precinct except precinct.
you really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
my
did. I just didn't quite get around to all of
You
them.
know I'm going to have to report you now.
Well, okay.
Donna, hi, how
All
are
right,
you?
so we're joined
you
with.
look like you've been outside
I've
for
been outside all day. Yes,
Yep.
I have.
So we've moved from the mini campaign to the maxi campaign. We welcome Donna Newcomb, who's our new school committee
Thank you.
person, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Mandatory congratulations
Thank you.
here. Nice job.
Very nice job. It seems like this is a job that's been waiting for you for a long time. What finally caused you to want to run after all your years in education here?
So it was, I think all of my years in education that certainly sparked my interest and my desire to want to run for school committee. But I had always said that I would wait for my kids to be in college so that I could devote the time that I felt that it needed, and have that time available. So, and my youngest went off to school, to college this year, and so I decided to run.
And would you have run even if Sal had not dropped out?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I would have.
That would have been an interesting contest.
I think the results, well, never mind. Everybody knows Donna, and we know that she's been involved for many, many years doing so many things, I couldn't even count them all. And the most important thing is that you're a very thoughtful person. I haven't heard you
Thank you.
explain anything you've addressed or want to do without a lot of thought and clarity behind your explanations, and people can resonate with that. I understand her. I get what she's saying. And that's why the votes
Thank you.
showed up.
Thank you. So.
And so you enter a new arena, one you've obviously observed for a long time.
Yes.
Do you think there are any first steps that you'd like to see the school committee do that maybe hasn't been done, or obvious ways, directions to go?
So the first thing I think that we need to do is to reestablish our vision and focus on what the role of the school committee is in the community, commit to that vision, and then begin to rebuild the trust and credibility with all of the stakeholders in town.
Mm-hmm. You think there's been some shortcomings in that regard, in vision and communication?
So I think that there's, certainly there's a strategic plan in place, but I think that we all need to make sure that we understand what that is, how we're going to operationalize it, and that we're all committed to that plan, and then really stay focused on that.
I think Donna's calm and focused demeanor, and demeanor is a big thing on the school committee these days, is going to make a big difference. I can't imagine a discussion that is moving along with common sense and open dialogue and stuff ever getting out of control with Donna sitting at the school committee. So that people are looking forward to that calmness that you naturally bring when you talk and when people listen to you. Calmness comes with people listening as well as talking.
Mm-hmm.
Now you perhaps benefited from having as an opponent a relative newcomer to the town, Jamie Outland Brown, and you obviously shared the podium in 4 debates. What was your takeaway? It seemed like there was a lot of commonality in your position.
Absolutely, there was. I think that we have a lot of the same ideas about the first steps that the school committee needs to make, the direction that it should be going in. Really terrific opponent. I really thoroughly enjoyed getting to know her throughout this race. I think she brings a lot to the table, and I hope that she really stays involved because I think she's going to be fantastic.
Is there a role for you in reaching out to her?
Absolutely, because I think that she had some really great ideas, and I don't think that we should lose sight of what those were. I think we need to sit down and talk, and I think that some of the things that she talked about doing would be really terrific things to think about as we go forward. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that I'd like to see her stay involved because, as I said, I think she can bring a lot.
I think Jamie will. I had a chance. She was calling around last night. She happened to give me a call last night to, see how things were going, and we had a chance to talk. Mm-hmm. And I said, irrespective of what happens, I hope you stay involved.
Absolutely.
And she committed that she was going to do that because this is her home now.
Yes, yes.
And that makes a big difference because you always take care of your home.
Yep. And so, as I said, it was terrific to meet her. It was terrific to meet the people that were helping out on her campaign. So it was really just a very positive experience. I thought it was a great campaign.
It was.
You know, I thought it was. There were a lot of great discussions, a lot of issues debated, and I think a lot of information that was shared with the community as a result.
It was interesting that she pointed out, and others have along the way, that she recently moved to Chelmsford, and one of the reasons was she had school-age children, and that was a deciding factor for her. It seems like you have not a requirement, but sort of a mantle to continue that high quality of schools. And
Yes.
do you think you have the team, in the school committee, the superintendent, and the teachers are the right team for continuing that?
Absolutely. I think the teachers are absolutely fantastic. I've had the opportunity to be able to meet several of them throughout the campaign. They're a tremendously committed group who really want to do the right thing by kids every single day in the classroom. I think the superintendent is solid. I'll be interested in getting to know him and his performance as we go forward. And I think there's a lot of talent on the school committee and a lot of people. And this is the most important thing. First of all, I want to say that I've never experienced anything like this before. Okay, it was a grueling couple of months. And so thank you to all of the people who took the time out of their schedule to run for an office, because it takes a lot of time and it's very stressful. And so the current school committee members, they're there because I think that, they've been through this process and it's not easy, but you have to have a desire to want to make the public schools better, to be seated at that table. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, is to joining a group of people who are committed to working on continuing to move the public schools forward and continue to keep the quality that we've had for a long time.
That's very well said. One of the things Evelyn and I enjoy every year is going to the Alumni Awards Banquet.
Yep, yeah.
And you see all the ex-deans and the teachers and most importantly the graduates from Chelmsford who have done so breathtakingly well in their lives. That doesn't happen by accident.
No.
They've got a good start, and so when you look back at all these people from relatively new graduates to people who've been out for many, many years, I won't name names, but to say that they got launched from Chelmsford schools.
Yep.
And that's a great heritage to try and maintain.
Absolutely.
Glenn and I were talking earlier about how challenging it is to be a school committee member. You probably have a steep learning curve ahead of you.
Well, I've been a teacher for 30 years, so I think that I'm familiar. I think that I think there will be a learning curve, don't get me wrong, but I think that having been in the classroom and been a teacher for so long, I think that's going to help me as we go forward. So because there are so many issues, and we were talking about that, recently. I mean, it's everything from transportation issues to lunch issues to safety issues to curriculum issues and MCAS, and it goes on and on. And snow days, right? Blizzard bags. I mean, it's really the range of issues is right. Absolutely, is really
it is the toughest
extraordinary.
job in town. You knew that when you.
I actually didn't know. I thought Selectman was the toughest one. But,
I don't think so.
So I think that there is a lot of work to be done, and I'm very excited about it.
And so, will the school committee reconstitute its officers in short term?
Yes, they'll have, I believe, a reorganization meeting sometime this week.
All right.
Yes.
Well, we look forward to seeing you, your cogent, articulate self on the screen many, many times in the years ahead. Congratulations.
Thank you
again.
very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And go warm up.
Yeah.
Leave Pete will take or you can take the microphone on. I want to mention we're seeing the vote totals here, and if I can believe the number that pops up in the upper right corner every now and then, 25% voter turnout, which seems pretty
on the
strong.
high end of what I would have predicted.
And certainly when I spoke to the town clerk just before we went on the air, she was saying 12, 15%, but
that's on my low end.
Yeah, and I was here in the afternoon. I usually, in the past, have come in like at the crack of dawn when there's always a long line. But there was a very steady flow of voters coming in. So I think that's
even
good.
with the bad weather, and the weather, towards the later part of the day wasn't that good. So people came to vote for a reason. If you get in the car and you put the kids in the car and you come down here and vote, there's something you want to get done, and now we see the results.
So I think what I'd like to do, if we can call them up, are the 7 questions that were asked of voters, and maybe we can kind of tick through them and walk through those results one at a time. Question 1, again, just to recap, we have 168 elected town meeting representatives, 18 from each of the 9 precincts, and every 3 years they run for re-election. And the question is, if you're already an incumbent, how easy or difficult should it be to say, I'm running again? And that's what question 1 was all about. It allows you to just notify the town clerk of your intent to run, basically.
I'm sure all the incumbents voted for that. So I'll send in a letter and say, hey, I'd really like to run again after these 3 years. And some people would argue it'd be nice to go out and get the 25 signatures. But if you're doing a good job as town meeting rep, people should know what you're doing, should know you. And for that, having been tested in that role, they should know a lot about you.
Right. And you raised an interesting point. We're not going to go through the individual contests for town meeting rep, but there will be a large number of new town meeting reps showing up on the 23rd of this month for their first town meeting. And so I would offer a little advice to them and the incumbent town meeting reps. Do your homework and show up prepared.
Couldn't have said it better.
All right, so question 2 also has to do with town meeting reps. Let's say, for example, that there were 7 people running and only 6 could be elected, but 1 had to drop out or no longer could serve. The question is, does that 7th person automatically take the seat, or should there be some threshold? And what has been the case was that they had to have had at least 10 votes.
Right.
And this question 2 says that, well, maybe if they got any votes, that would be enough.
Right.
And so that seems to have passed handily.
Sounds democratic.
Very much so. And you make the argument that if they were earnest enough to put themselves forward to vote, then they're probably willing to do the work.
And they probably have more than 10 votes.
And they probably have 10 votes. So question 3 is an interesting one. This has to do with whether the office of town constable ought to be elected or appointed. It's elected right now. And there was a lot of discussion about this at the last town meeting. And we're waiting. Oh, there we're seeing it now.
It's on the
right.
display there. We can take
I have the online showing here, and there's a little bit of a delay. So 60%, and this is binding.
Yes.
All up to this point, these are all binding. So I guess that means that from now on, constable will be appointed.
Unless there's something illegal in what we've just approved as voters, these would pass through the charter review committee, through town meeting, now to the voters. And now they go to the state just to make sure that everything is legal on it, which we think that they will be. Now that's a change because we've had an elected constable forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of people's minds, Bill Spence is constable for life. Was anyway until this recent.
He was constable for life.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Bill.
All right. So questions 4 and 5 both have to do with tuning up the town charter with regard to the town manager. One is that if we have a need for a new town manager, that a screening committee be established that has both selectmen and town residents on that committee. Apparently, that's not a given now.
Yeah,
I would like that to be.
Hadn't been required, but now it will be required that you have the stakeholders in the selection committee presenting their recommendation or recommendations to the board of.
And obviously, the electorate thought that was a
really
good
good
common,
idea.
really good idea, common sense. Similarly, question 5 is if you have an interim town manager while you're waiting for somebody else to be selected by the Board of Selectmen. Typically, they're hired for a 6-month term, but maybe that's not long enough. And so the question is, can you extend that? And this question 5 allows that. And as you can see,
Slight math error there.
There is a math error, but about 80% of the votes were in favor of that. Now, the last 2 are the ones that I think were drawing certainly the most lawn signs, if not the most attention. It has to do with this tax rate that we've been talking about pretty much all night. Whether to and these 2 were non-binding, so this is sort of a finger in the wind for the Board of Selectmen. And the notion is pretty clearly that a large fraction of residents, and they're the only people who get to vote, would prefer to see a split tax rate with businesses paying at a higher rate and therefore residents paying at a lower rate than they do now. As we were saying, perhaps this was a kind of a foregone conclusion on this vote.
Yeah, I mean, when you ask the question, would you like to lower your taxes and have business pay for it, that's not a hard answer. Because it's a very complex question. If you make that change a small change, it can reverse itself and result in more of the more taxes to the residents as the property values for businesses drop. But again, we're going to take a look at this in a lot more detail. I'm not at all surprised by the results of this straw poll.
But, you know, the thing is, these taxes, and I think you'll see this come up a lot at town meeting, which is just less than 3 weeks away at this point, right. Where we'll see the budget for fiscal 2019. And every year there is this issue of what to do with free cash. And there has been a movement, right, because as has been said, if you have free cash, that means you didn't budget correctly and you collected too much money. Although that's
exactly.
it's a simplification. But the point is
right
that some people maintain that money ought properly, to the extent possible, be given back to the voters.
It's all taxes, right?
It's all tax money. So this issue of taxes will be on the floor of the town meeting, and we'll look forward to seeing that and where that goes. The last question is question 7, which again, this is non-binding. But now that the voters have expressed their preference, strong preference for a split tax rate, let's say that the Board of Selectmen enact that. So business will be paying more per thousand evaluation, or the owners of those businesses anyway, than a resident. A lot of businesses in town are small. They're what you would call a small business. They have fewer than 10 employees, less than $1 million. And so the notion of question 7 is, shall we establish a lowered tax burden of 10% for these small businesses? And that also got a very strong response.
What some people don't realize is a lot of the small businesses in town are renters and not owners of property, because everything we're talking about here are property taxes. So there's taxes on the property, there's also taxes on the business personal property, computers and machinery inside the business. They don't tax us on the fact that we have a piano or a computer in our homes, but they do tax the businesses on that.
Right.
So if you're paying rent, the property owner of the big building gets the higher tax rate, which gets passed on to you, and there is no exemption, even though you are small, right. Even though you have 10 or fewer
So the
employees.
exemption benefits the owner, not the
No, he won't get it either, because he's too big. Because
got it.
He's a big property owner, so it won't accrue to the big property like Summer Street,
right.
And it won't be passed through to the businesses. They'll be ending up with higher rent.
Right. So it remains to be seen.
So there's a lot of this.
Again, neither of these are binding, and so it should be it's December when this is usually decided.
That's why it's a selectman-only call to see what's best for the overall town, especially if we're trying to attract new business. Raising business taxes might work against that, but it's important to study it frequently. And we said it should be studied every 10 years. Well, it's been a little bit more than that currently, so it's time to take another look at it. There should be a study committee to see what's changed, what's remained the same, and what would be best for the town. Burlington and other towns like that have way more business space than Chelmsford does. And so when you add taxes onto the businesses, it has a different leverage than if you have few businesses and a lot of
in Chelmsford, 80% of the tax revenue, roughly, comes from residents.
That's right.
About 20% from the businesses. So if you were to really increase the taxes for businesses, it would incrementally reduce taxes.
Small amount for the residents.
But you're saying in places where Burlington, I think of Burlington, does anybody actually live in Burlington? I guess
they're
they
building
do.
more apartments
Right.
and everything else in
But
Burlington.
it's a different right. ratio and a different metric there. So we are closing in on our conclusion here. We just want to emphasize that all the results you've been seeing are temporary. They're provisional. We haven't fully tallied in the absentee ballots and such, but clearly none of the two contested races was close. So we are pretty sure in welcoming George Dixon and Emily Antul to the Board of Selectmen and Donna Newcomb to the school committee. And we won't be going through the counts for the individual town meeting reps, but I did notice that on one of them there was a name that's pretty familiar to everyone who won't be taking a seat, and that is Dennis Reddy, who was running again for, he's in Precinct 8. And of course, Dennis died suddenly, tragically, unexpectedly, just a couple of weeks ago. And we're certainly going to miss him town-wide, and especially here at Chelmsford TeleMedia. Dennis has been on our board of directors since the year 2000. I checked that. He has been a fixture on our board. Always, he was involved in so many things. And just before we sign off, we'd like to roll a little clip of some remembrances of Dennis as we reflect back on his amazing life.
He was a blessing to the town.
Good evening and welcome to Town Talk. Town Talk is a new program that Chelmsford TeleMedia is putting on, and the purpose of this program is to help train directors, camera people. So the first thing I would say, if you're interested in becoming a director of a show or a camera person, give me a call or give the studio a call. Good evening and welcome to Town Talk. I'm Dennis Reddy, the host of Town Talk, and tonight's guest is Carol Clevin, our state representative. Susan, before we start our little chit-chat, I did want to make an announcement that the League of Women Voters is sponsoring a candidates night at the Chelmsford Adams Library, and it's going to be October the 12th at 7 o'clock. Real estate agents being harassed at open houses, and you know, and
does that happen a lot?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, things like.
God, I'm so naive.
I had a real estate agent come back from an open house, and you know, this guy was trying to kiss her, and and I said, "We're going up and see Gail right now," and she's going, "No."
Yeah, Dennis Reddy, a fixture in town for so many decades, known to one and all, beloved by one and all. We are certainly going to miss him.
He's been a friend and an encourager of so many people that have run for every office in town that he cannot be replaced, but we certainly do remember him.
So our time has come to a sad end here. Glenn, I want to thank you again for joining me. What are your thoughts on what you've seen here tonight? You had two newcomers in these important races, new faces to pretty much everybody, one successful and one not.
Well, the good news is that new people want to participate. And when new people want to participate, we all win. Because there's going to be new views, and I already told you about what I thought about fresh new ideas. Let's see some things happen like that. So having new people participate only makes our town stronger. And Chelmsford is a very unique town where people can have, you know, political disagreements at the national level, but boy, do we work together to make our town the best possible town we can. And that's why we stay here, we live here, and we want other people like us to join us in this mission. So I'm excited that new people have come into town and decided to participate in the way that Emily has and the way that Jamie has. You know, one winner and one person that didn't quite make it this time, but neither of them are going away for sure. Certainly not Emily because she has to serve, and Jamie is going to be a contributing factor to the town for many years. That's what makes Chelmsford Chelmsford.
Great words. And by the way, you're not allowed to run for office. You're too valuable as my co-host here on these election coverages. We want to remind you that town meeting is coming up in less than 3 weeks, and you'll see Glenn on the floor as a town meeting rep, and often offering cogent commentary from the microphone. I'll be handling some of the play-by-play, and we look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, we want to thank everybody who did vote today. And for those of you who've watched, our terrific crew at Chelmsford TeleMedia has been moving equipment in the rain all day to try to get this set up here at McCarthy. We're grateful to them for their effort. And again, thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Beatty along with Glenn Thoren, wishing you a good night and a great spring.
Thank you, everyone.